Hello and welcome back to Where Are All My Friends? Damn, I am excited for this one. It is with Neil Westfall from A Day to Remember. And this episode was a long time coming. If you've been following the podcast, you know I did an episode with Shelnutt, their drummer, earlier last year, and it was a super popular episode. And just overall, I really love this band as people. They're all like super rad people. And it's a massive shout out to Adam Elmakias for introducing me to any and all of them. So this episode was a long time coming. Neil and I had kind of bonded over a bunch of other hobbies that we have outside of music, like cars and gear and restaurants. But I really honestly didn't know his story when it came to like the band and his early days and where he grew up and his perspective and take on the band growing so much and ultimately blowing up. And the conversation ended up being so good that we talked for almost 2 hours. So I'm splitting it into two and it kind of splits perfectly. The first half is him just talking about his perspective of the band coming up, their early days, starting as a band in Florida, starting to tour, all of those super memorable moments of like ADTR like really becoming a big band and some of his favorite memories from that. And then the second half is what he's up to now. All of his new endeavors. He just opened a restaurant with his wife in Florida. He's been streaming on Twitch a ton. He started a podcast with Adam, where the band is currently at right now, all of that. So it's kind of this perfect split into 2 episodes. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss part 2. Episodes drop every Monday. And another thing that I wanted to say is I just started the Where Are All My Friends Patreon. And in that, I uploaded an entire bonus episode with Neil about us specifically nerding out on like touring and how much we love tour and his experiences going on tour with Blink-182, which is one of his favorite bands. We talk all about that. We talk a lot about like some of our mutual friends and some deep dives on some of our hobbies. So if you feel like supporting the show on a whole other level, and if you feel like hearing those extra deep dives of his stories, go to the Patreon now. You'll find it there. That's patreon.com/whereareallmyfriends, or you can find it on the website, which is just whereareallmyfriends.com. All right, that says it all. Let's get into a great episode. All right, where are all my friends? What a special episode. We are with Neil Westfall from A Day to Remember. And I think this was a long time coming, but it worked out in a really cool way. Massive shouts to Elmakias, because without him, I don't think this would have happened. He really started all of this friendship. He was the reason that I got to talk to Shelnutt last year. I'm really hyped that we're getting to do this because outside of A Day to Remember, I feel like there's a lot of things that you are doing that I am genuinely interested in. And even like right before we started recording, we were just talking about like the blessing and curse of deep diving into what starts as hobbies and then just goes even further. And I'm really curious. Like, I want to hear about all these things on a deeper level, because since meeting you through Adam, I have been in California, you've been in Florida, and we haven't like properly gotten to like chop it up. So I'm really, really excited for this episode on so many levels. I feel like there's going to be so many parallels and so many things. So thank you.
Yeah, man. Any chance I get to talk about myself, it's no. It's very rare that you get to meet someone that kind of shares the way that it takes to take a hobby to something more, you know, like, and I find myself doing that a lot. And like, to meet someone that cares about like all the things that I'm interested in, I can probably like, can this podcast be like 7 hours long? Because I could literally talk about all these things for like,
dude, on my list, I'm like, it's going to be dangerous because I have Winter Park Biscuit Co. You started a restaurant with your wife and it looks amazing. You get it. You understand the aesthetic. You understand how to do it. All of that. You are now a dad, and that's freaking cool. And I want to know your perspective on that and how much that changed things for you. You've been streaming on Twitch and you've been doing a damn good job of that. This isn't just like, I don't know, like the way, even right now, as we're talking, you have a very proper audio and video setup, and you took the time to care and set it up so intentionally. So that in itself, you have unicorn tones, which it has to come from just being the product of loving guitar and tinkering all the time. Mm-hmm. You have a podcast with Adam. Yeah. And that in itself, when we were texting, you complimented something on my production, and you don't understand. That's like Michael Jordan being like, hey, you're good at basketball. I actually don't know about sports, but I think that's what that's like. Because I use your guys' audio as the bar for a reference of like audio needs to sound this good.
Oh, well, thank you.
So yeah. And just the subject matter and all that. I think that's cool. Like I love you both. So like hearing you break it down and pay it forward to people that want to learn how to tour and all that, like props for doing something fucking cool for the community.
Yeah, you got it.
And then also there's trucks and cars, and you know the mutual homies at O-Town Customs, and I think you built a really sick truck, right?
We have two that we are building.
Yeah. What year?
I have a 58 Chevy that's like the one that we're building from the ground up, and then I have a 66 C10 that's on like a 87 K20 4x4 frame that's just obnoxious and loud and really hard to drive, but also like amazingly fun. So yeah.
I've always been about the C10s more than the Ford, like the F100s and the 150s.
Same.
For some reason, to me, the C10 just speaks to me. So there's a lot to talk about here. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, you are in a very successful band. And I think you're one of the people that when I talk to you about music, you're doing it for the right reasons. Like it does, again, right before we started recording, awesome. Like the band has had a lot of success, but you would go back to touring in a van any day and you would unload the trailer all by yourself any day. Like you just fucking love music. And I love talking to people like that. I think it's so cool.
Music is everything. Music gave me everything. I mean, I wouldn't be able to explore any of these hobbies if it wasn't for music. So
damn. So I think this is going to be a fun one. In an effort to guide it in some degree, what I was thinking, what I wanted to hear about, what I was really curious of is I too grew up in Florida, and I think that you guys were maybe like one generation before me in music. And I really didn't start paying attention to music. Like I was skateboarding, I was into cars, and music wasn't even really on my radar until probably 2006. And watching from that time to then like going and touring with a band in 2008, you couldn't not hear about A Day to Remember growing up in Florida. Like by that time, you guys were really starting to make your mark there. But I'm so curious for you, the very early days of like, what city did you grow up in? Where did you pick up a guitar? I think you joined the band really early, but I'm so curious of like that era and time.
So I lived in a small town called Summerfield, which is about 30 minutes south of Ocala. And I lived on a dirt road, and they finally paved my road when I was in 8th grade. And so like I got into like skateboarding, like when I was in 7th and 8th grade. I was obsessed with Blink-182. And then because of Blink-182, I found out about all of my other favorite bands through their favorite bands. Like they talked about like punk rock, like NoFX, MXPX, Screeching Weasel, Pennywise, AFI, Alkaline Trio, whatever. The list goes on because music they listen to is like, I found out about them through an older brother of mine, a half brother or a step brother of mine. He gave me Green Day Dookie, and then he gave me Cheshire Cat by Blink-182, and he gave me Bone Thugs and Harmony. I forget the name, but he gave me these CDs, and that kind of started my journey. I was like, I love this. And then as Green Day kind of rose to commercial success, and as Blink-182 kind of rose to commercial success, I loved like pop music. So I would watch MTV, and I just like wanted to be like Blink-182. I think their sense of humor really grabbed me and brought me into that whole world. And I was like, this is me. Like I already have this sense of humor. And there's people out there that are just successful doing this, playing music. That's what I want to do. And so I was living in the middle of nowhere, and me and my friend John Kahn, who was the original bass player of A Day to Remember, we started a band, and it was awful. It was like an MXPX Blink-182 cover band. It was called Magic Chinese. And then it was called Empty Sink. Like, I don't even know why. And then we would I was taking this graphic design class in high school or in middle school, and we were learning how to print t-shirts. And so I would sell t-shirts to all my friends at school. So like I kind of got into learning about business and selling stuff to people and like kind of like marketing the band didn't even have music, but all of my friends were wearing our t-shirts for Empty Sink when we were in middle school. And so from there, I joined this other band called 2 Days Too Late, which was the precursor to A Day to Remember.
Okay. Wow. So you were in bands before A Day to Remember.
Yeah, but they like weren't real. Like they were just like, we're going to jam in our, like we wanted to, we put a name to like our practice. Like, you know, like we
very
never
much like middle school. Like
yeah,
just like
we didn't play shows.
Everybody that had an instrument.
I don't think I played a show until I was in a band called 2 Days Too Late. And it was I played 3 or 4 shows with that band. One was our high school talent show. One was in Jacksonville. One was in Ocala at O'Malley's. That was like one of the first shows I ever played. And then, and I got kicked out of that band. I don't even know why. Yeah, I got kicked out because I think the other guitar player didn't like me. And like at the time everyone was doing like jackass shit, and like I'd always prank him, and I thought it was like funny to like prank people, and he just hated me because I was always like take it too far, because that's just like who I am. And so I got kicked out of the band, and then Tom joined the band, which is the original guitar player of A Day to Remember.
Okay.
Tom was in that band for a little while. I was just still friends with everybody and kind of hung out and we all did our thing, whatever. And Tom didn't care for the singer of 2 Days Too Late because he wasn't like the best singer. He kind of screamed more, and he was awful at singing. And then so he took John, our original bass player, and Bobby, our original drummer, and then went and started a band with Jeremy. And they had this guy, Joe Barnes, who was the original guitar player. He never finished the show. He wanted to be like Kurt Cobain. He'd break his stuff, and like A Day to Remember like wasn't about that. And so he would like spit on the crowd and stuff. And everyone's like,
he went like a little too far.
Yeah,
Rockstar
like,
game at a little too much of a local band
like,
level.
what the fuck, dude? Like just finish the show, you know? So Joe got kicked out of the band. He actually helped name the band A Day to Remember. That's why they let him in the band to begin with. They asked me to be in the band because I was friends with Jeremy, and Jeremy's like, yo, what about Neil? Tom's like, yeah, I love Neil. John was my best friend. John's like, of course. Bobby was a good friend of mine. He's like, yeah, let's have Neil join the band. And so I joined the band like 3 shows into A Day to Remember. So they played 3 shows without
you're
me.
Pretty OG.
I am, it's me and Jeremy. Like we're the most OG A Day to Remember that there is.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
So we weren't even anything then. Like we were still kind of just like a band name that we practiced, and we played shows that really not many people came to.
And to paint the picture, because I am as well Florida man, you're still in Ocala area going to school?
Yeah.
And then, because there's not really even venues.
No, we would play
like,
churches.
I'm trying to think of.
We'd play like Easy Street was a spot that like we kind of made into a venue. Like they had this room that they did birthday parties, and we would continuously do shows there. And then eventually like people knew Easy Street as like the venue of Ocala. And it was
so A Day to Remember made Easy Street.
Well, yes and no.
I'm going to say it.
Yes and no. You know, like I only take credit for that because we're the only band that still exists and we are still around doing whatever. So I'll definitely say, yeah, we made it, whatever. There was like a huge thriving local scene because of that venue and because of how cool the woman who managed it, she really just let it happen. She like let a scene thrive, and there was a couple people that were promoting and doing shows, and like Drew Russ from 7 Star would bring all the hardcore bands in, and he would play at K&K. He would play at Tuscola Youth Center. We'd play at Easy Street, and like random churches around the area that were like nice enough. Like some of the band members went there, and they'd be like, yeah.
You were like 15-ish?
Yeah, I was 15 when I joined the band. And during that whole time, like I stopped going to high school when I was 16 because I was like, I'm going to be in A Day to Remember. Like that didn't mean anything at the time. You know, it was like, I have life that I want to live, and I don't think anything that this school is teaching me. I just thought I knew everything, you know, like I thought like, I don't need to know
That's an interesting parallel too, because that's kind of part of Shelnutt's story as well, right? Like he was so obsessed with it by that point. He was like, I don't want to fucking be in school.
Yeah, well, we fucked him up. Like not really, like because he's an amazing dude. But like we brought him on and we're like, yo, do you want to do this? And at first he was like, I don't know. You know, like he's like, let me ask my mom. And it was kind of like that. Like he saw that like we were in there, and Josh and I were kind of like his big brothers. and we mentored him and kind of gave him, like Josh was the only one in our band that kind of went to college. So Josh gave him the other side of it. Josh is like the responsible one and the guy that kind of handles a lot of like the more complicated business decisions and taking care of that thing and making sure everything's like thought about and handled on that sense. And then he had me, who was like this person. I was like, at that time I was a psychopath and didn't care about anything. And I like had this car and I would always like jump these railroad tracks and do crazy ass shit. And I thought like Jackass was cool. And I was a psycho. I was straight edge. So I was just like,
you had to like channel it in something else.
We just did the most fucked up shit. So yeah. So he had these like two separate like older brother figures that were very close to him in the band. And he kind of probably like latched onto us and was like, yeah, I don't need to go to school. I don't need to do any of that stuff. I'm just going to join a day to remember and do this. Like, look at these two guys.
You were
they're
like
doing it. And
that reckless and yeah. So wait, how old are you?
I'm 33.
Okay. So you're 3 years older than I am. And then that would mean that you're a little bit older than Alex as well. Yeah. So that makes sense. I get it.
Yep.
So then, okay, that you have painted that picture so well. So your like A Day to Remember, as much as it was truly just a local band, was like your high school band of like completing the picture of Jackass and skateboarding and just going around playing shows with your friends. Like that's the dream. Like that's like, and also probably like pretty much the best way to live life in Florida at that, because there's not really much else to do. Like that's you figured it out.
I mean, we would just hang out in Walmart parking lots. We would hang out in the parking lot of like fast food restaurants, and then we would go practice, and then we would go hang out at parking lots again. Like there was nothing to do really. And then randomly there would be shows, and that was the other thing is anytime there was a show, we would be there. Like as like patrons, like we would go support every show. We went to, I think personally, I went to like from 2000, I don't know, 3 or 4 till like we started touring heavily. Like I probably went to every show in Ocala. Anytime there was a show, I was there. And
dude, because I'm trying to think, like, again, you were a little bit before me. Like, what year is that all this was happening?
Like 2000. So A Day to Remember started in 2005. So probably like 2004 until 2008.
Yeah. So during that time, I was like, I wasn't quite paying attention to it, but like I had Tim from Under Oath on the podcast, and I was talking to him about something similar. Is like, you kind of knew other Florida bands, and there wasn't that much to like, you had to pay attention to other things and like going to shows and all that. So like, what bands were coming through, or like what bands were on your radar at that time? What venue, like would you drive to Tampa for shows at like the Orpheum ever? Like,
we would, anytime we had enough gas money, like we were going to Gainesville all the time. So we'd go to like Covered Dish. We'd go to like 1982. We would go to this little venue up there that was called like Sidebar. And then we'd go to Orlando and we'd go to the Social. We would go to Sapphire Supper Club before the Social, or the Beecham. We would go to the House of Blues all the time. We would go to the Haven Lounge back in the day. That was like our first, that was our first show in Orlando as A Day to Remember, out like in Orlando.
Shit.
And then we booked this show down in West Palm Beach with this guy named Lackey that I met through MySpace. And he agreed to pay us $40 gas money to come and play this show at Spanky's. Which I knew was like the fucking venue, because I had a couple friends that like I would go down to West Palm Beach and we'd go to like hardcore shows and shit like that. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. And we booked it, and we drove down there in like Jeremy's dad's truck or something. And it was like something that was like really gnarly. And I think it cost us $60 in gas to get down there and get back. But the guy he agreed to pay us 40. And then when we got down there, he's like, hey guys, I don't really have any money. Like, here's like $10. I'm like, bro, we're already taking a loss. Like, you have to at least give us $40. These dudes are going to beat the shit out of me. I already told them that you were going to give us $40, and we're already having to pay whatever. So that day we met this guy named JJ from South Florida, who his name is JJ Kasiri.
You met JJ that far back?
Yeah, we've known JJ for that long. So JJ, we met him at Spanky's on one of the first times we ever played West Palm Beach.
For a listener who doesn't know, JJ is like still to this day a very successful booking agent, and has been in the scene for a long time, and is outside of, I would even say, rock music now. But that's just, it's fucking crazy. I didn't know that. I've never heard of an interaction that early with him.
we met him that day, and he basically was like, hey, I do shows down here. And if you use me as your promoter, you won't have to deal with anything like that. So him and Josh kind of became good friends, and I became good friends with him. And then we started using JJ as our contact for South Florida. And that's how we kind of got into that scene. And so we started playing Pompano. We started playing Fort Lauderdale. We started playing any chance we could play down there, we would. We just wanted to tour. We wanted to play every show we possibly could. We looked up to bands like Newfound Glory. They had a DVD. It was called like The Story So Far, which is probably how the band The Story So Far got their name. That song in that DVD by them. But it kind of just talked about how they started. They were like, we'd email promoters and we'd be like, hey, there's a tour coming through. Can we open? And we were like, hey, we should do that. And so we started doing that, and we would hit up people and be like, hey, can we hop on this show and we could do this and can we do that? And we met JJ, and JJ started booking us super, super early on. And like, if you go back and watch A Second Glance, the music video, like we beat the shit out of JJ Kasiri in that music video. Because God. There's like a weird dice game that goes wrong, and then we beat him up because like he's trying to like steal the money or something.
Oh my God.
And it's like
that's a whole other level
song.
Is like the detail that goes into Day to Remember music videos.
Yeah. Oh man. Like even back then, like someone filmed this for free, and we just used all of our friends that were hardcore kids from South Florida, because that's like what we were, is we just like going to hardcore shows. And that's why A Day to Remember sounded was like pop punk, because we had this love for like songwriting and pop punk, but then we also were a part of this scene that was like hardcore and metalcore, and those were the shows that we were playing, and we wanted to kind of like, we wanted kids to come to our show and dance. We wanted kids to mosh, and we wanted to fit in, and we wanted to be accepted in this thing that we were already a part of as just like fans, And so that kind of shaped us, being from Florida at that time, like how important hardcore was to the Florida scene. And then also our love for like what we were already kind of into as just music fans. So yeah.
It's so crazy to hear that from you, because again, even though I came into the music scene a couple of years after you in Florida, like the way you just said that is so true. Because it wasn't like oil and water. Like hardcore kids and pop punk kids could get along.
Yeah.
But it was different.
We were all the same.
Very different shows. Yeah. So it was like you were all friends. Everybody was friends, but it was just a totally different vibe and a different energy. And I do really feel like A Day to Remember was one of those bands that both your pop punk friends and your heavy friends would be wearing. You know what? They would all be wearing the fucking Pac-Man shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember the fucking Pac-Man shirt?
We still sell that. It's like,
dude,
we've probably made like 76 different versions of that shirt, and it's been like probably one of our biggest selling shirts to date.
Yeah, that's how you knew. If somebody in Florida was wearing the Pac-Man shirt, you were like, all right, well, we're probably going to be friends.
It's kind of crazy because like, those early days, that is, I mean, I guess it all kind of goes back to like bands like Evergreen Terrace, where they could fit on any show. Like they were heavy and poppy, and like they played those shows, and we were like, that's kind of cool. We loved Evergreen Terrace. So we looked up to Evergreen Terrace when we were coming up, and we loved like all the bands that were like underneath them, like Kids Like Us and Casey Jones. And we just, Seven Star, we just wanted to like fit in. Like not even like in a weird way, but just like in a way like we love this so much, we want to be a part of it, like.
Yeah, like it's so interesting to hear that, because it's like I feel like, not that A Day to Remember is misunderstood in any way, but it's almost like the band got so big that like you guys were setting the bar and you guys were setting the standard, and it was like everybody was focusing on looking to you. But as I hear about these early days, it's like you guys were just fans of music. Like you were looking up to all these people, and you're like, oh, if these bands that we love are doing stuff like this, like we want to do stuff like that. And like even your videos and everything, like if you're having influences like that and you're seeing people have so much fun with music, that's just you guys being like, all right, well then if we are going to do a music video, how do we have the most fun with it? We're going to play a show, how do we get the most people to dance? If we get like, it's just like you guys being genuinely stoked that you get the chance to do it.
Mm-hmm. It's true. I mean,
that's so fucking cool.
And at the time it wasn't misunderstood. Honestly, anyone that we came in contact with that kind of had any success in music was like, well, you just seem confused. Like you can't be this mosh band and then have a pop punk song that's on acoustic that talks about getting butterflies, and you can't have them on the same album, and you can't do these things, and you can't have a shirt designed with like murder and whatever, and then have a shirt designed with like Pac-Man and flowers, and then you can't make fun of yourselves in one music video and then be serious in another music video. It's like, at the time when we were just like, we're just going to do it and we don't care what anyone else says and we are just having fun. So it doesn't really even fucking matter. It's like, it wasn't about like being successful at that point. It was about just doing it and having fun. And it was successful because of that, and not taking ourselves too seriously and all this other shit,
I could add a point to that from an outside perspective, growing up in Florida and seeing it, because that was starting to happen. Like, you guys kind of pioneered something accidentally from what you loved. And the credit that I have to pay you, and the thing to realize about it is, yes, you mixed things that theoretically you couldn't do, but you actually did it really, really well. And you guys are all like, the albums that you put out, like when I go back and listen to other local bands or other bands from Florida that were putting albums out in 2005 that were trying to mix any type of like synth or like hardcore, like all these things, like it doesn't hold up the same way. So it's like, yes, you were earnestly just looking up to these bands and trying to do things that you liked, but there is an amount of skill that I have to say that A Day to Remember had that other bands didn't. And I don't know what that is, but like, I think it
was Jeremy McKinnon,
a piece that made it work. Really? Is that just like...
No, really. He's just a genius, man. When it comes to songwriting and making something catchy, like, cause like we were just writing things, right? Like we would write things that we liked, and I'm like, let's do this breakdown, or someone's like, let's put this 2-step part in. He just had this chorus, right? And the chorus anchored the whole thing. Like the chorus made all these other ways that we pushed the boundaries like acceptable, right? Like you always had this anchor. Like it was catchy, but it was also like edgy in this other way that was like us trying to figure out who we were as musicians and artists and writers. And then he always anchored it in with like, an incredible top line or an incredible like breakdown line or an incredible chorus melody lyric situation that like, it just, that dichotomy of like us being and pushing and doing everything that we could to like further us, and then having him be like a master at his craft without even really mastering his craft yet. Like he was figuring it out too. Yeah. We just got lucky because like I said, we found each other and we were all in that right place to kind of take advantage of what we were all good at, and push each other in ways that a lot of times bands don't get. And that's why they kind of wither away or never really reach their true potential, because they just aren't mirrored by somebody else. Like we had 5 people that were like, we mirrored each other in ways that pushed each other higher and better at everything that we were trying to do.
That's so fucking cool.
And a lot of people don't get that. And that's why I think that we're so lucky. And that's why I think that we were so successful and can still be successful, is because we still have that and we still push each other in those ways, even now as men rather than like friends or young guys, together figuring out life. So.
Yeah, no. And like, I think you just said that so well. And that explains it. And I get it and I feel it and I see it firsthand, and also kind of as a spectator from like seeing the Florida scene and seeing what you would do and all of that. And then kind of becoming a little bit closer with you guys through Adam, or then hearing the stories. Like you said that and it all clicks in my head where I'm like, oh yeah. Cool. So again, because there's so much that I want to talk about, a lot of the A Day to Remember story has been told, right? Like there's plenty of interviews, all of that. But the one thing that I think is magic, and the last piece of the band that I'm curious of from your perspective, is moments to you, specific moments in these days. Like, where do you remember any moments where you're like, wait a minute, this is real? Or like these standout moments of like where it started to happen, or you're like, whoa, like people showed up to this show, or just like those nuances, like.
I have a couple. I can kind of like start super far back. Like when I knew that like what we were doing was like working. There was this show on July 4th at that venue, Easy Street. And there was like, every band from Ocala at that time was playing this show. And I don't remember if like it was something we put together. It was something someone else put together. I think it was actually something someone else put together. Because eventually we started to promote all of our own shows just so we could kind of keep that money and start building and like paying for stuff like vans and recordings and stuff for ourselves. Like that's how we supplemented that. But this show was like something that someone else was putting on, and they're like, all right, you guys are like gonna play last. And we're like, we don't want to play last. Like, come on. They're like, you guys are the biggest. We're like, we're not the biggest. Like, we weren't, like, and so we're like, okay, whatever. I remember just sitting in the van the whole day. Like, Tom had traded his car for
It's like one of those like all day Florida festivals.
Yeah. But like Tom traded his car for this shitty van that had no air conditioning. And he was basically living in this van at the time. And so I remember just sitting in this van, sweating our ass off. It's July 4th in Florida. It's fucking hot as fuck. This venue we were playing at is like I said earlier, it's just like this room that was for birthday parties. And then there was an arcade, and then there was a go-kart track, and then it was in the parking lot of a movie theater in Ocala.
That sounds amazing.
It was pretty cool. But when you've been there so many times that you don't want to spend money on like the arcade anymore, and you're not going to ride the go-karts because they're not really that fun, and you can't go see a movie and whatever. You're just like there, right? It's hot as fuck. There's nowhere to go. There's like all these people that are like, there's like 7-year-olds in the arcade. And you have like all your friends that are like watching the bands and whatever. Yeah, okay. So
you're just in the parking lot.
We're just there melting, trying to survive, whatever. And we finally get up there, and we're all kind of like annoyed that we had to wait, and we didn't know we were going to play last. And then we played, and like everyone moshed for us. Everyone stayed, and people were singing along, and we were like, whoa. And I think we sold like $400 worth of merch. It was like the first show we had like real merch that we worked on, and it was like really shitty designs. Me and Jeremy, like we made this merch board that we like put up at the merch table. Like we spent like the whole night before doing all this stuff, and we didn't know like that it was going to be
PVC display kind of vibe.
Yeah, and well, it had like a rope light, and then it had like a pegboard that we would like stuck all the shirts. We pinned them to this pegboard, and it was like kind of dangerous because the back was like all spikes from all this things that we stuck through. And so we sold like $400 worth of merch. People sang along, people danced, and we were just like, whoa, that was the first time people were like excited to see us. And we played last and no one left. And we were just like, holy shit, that was fucking cool. That was rad. Like this might be something, and at the time I was just like, yep, I'm going all in. I was just like, fuck it. I'm not going to high school anymore. I don't give a shit. That's all I needed, I was like, fuck it. I don't care. This is it. This is what I'm doing. I'm playing music for the rest of my life. That feeling is what I'm chasing, that right there. The other was, we were like, just got done doing our first US tour. We toured with this band called Blessed by a Broken Heart and Foreknown. And it was the first time we had seen like California. And we had obviously done like a bunch of regional stuff and East Coast touring and Florida touring. And this was the first time we went all across America. We probably shouldn't have. We didn't really make any money. We played a bunch of really cool shows, met a bunch of really cool people that we're still friends with, a lot of them today. But
what year was this tour?
This was like 2000. It was before we recorded For Those Who Have Heart. So we were like, we had those songs and we were playing those songs from For Those Who Have Heart, but we hadn't recorded them yet. Like they were like demos. And we were like, had some demo stuff up on MySpace. So like we were doing that. And so it was before 2007, I think. It was when I came home and we would kind of go and hang out with people, and people had these bands that they like looked up to and they like liked. But then like I considered those people friends. They were just like, oh man, did you see that this one band played this show, whatever. And like, I'm like, I know Ted from whatever band. And I didn't like say this out loud, but in my mind, I'm like, I'm friends with these people. Like they're like my friend. They're my
like
peers.
In an egotistical way, you're just like, oh,
like I just thought it was so cool. Cause I'm like, man, I know this person like on a real level, and this is so badass. And that was like another moment where I was like, oh man, like we're kind of making it out of this town, and we're kind of like people that look at us as just people, like, hey, that's Neil, whatever. I've known him from Summerfield, whatever. We went to 5th grade together. And they're talking about these bands, and I'm like, that's my friend that you're talking about. That's my friend's band that like they're on our level, and we play shows and we do just as good as they do in other states, and no one here even knows that yet. And like, that was like another moment where I was like, oh man.
That was like that early sign where you're like, if they look at them like that, then this is going to be us.
Yeah. And I thought that was really fucking cool. Cause I'm like, man, not only are they talking really well about my friends and my peers that we've kind of toured together and kind of roughed it across America and done all this shit with, and had like real life-changing experiences with, but like we do just as good at them, as good as they do, or if not better in certain areas. And these people have no idea. And I was just like, man, maybe we are going to do this. Maybe this is going to work out. And it was just another like affirmation of like, okay, you're doing the right thing. And this is like a really cool fucking thing. And you should just keep doing it. And again, that was kind of early on as well. But yeah, those are two things that kind of come to mind.
That super answers it. I'm just obsessed with hearing those, right? Because obviously like you can go look at any social media now and you can pretty quickly be like, oh wow, yeah, Data Remember's huge. They've put out music with Marshmello and this is all crazy and these massive tours. But it's like that all started somewhere and those moments are so important to me. So Thank you. That's cool. That's real cool. All right. Take me up to speed. Let's jump right on into the current now.
Okay.
Because outside of the band, I think that there's something about you, and like earlier you said, it's like music afforded these opportunities to you. Like if it wasn't for music, you wouldn't have been able to like really deep dive into some of these things. But I'm really impressed by what you've paid attention to and the things that you have gotten into outside of just the band. I think that a lot of people could put their feet up and just be like, yeah, cool, I'm in a successful band. We're good. I'm chilling. But that's not the case with you. Like you have really gotten into some cool things. Like I guess let's start with the restaurant because that's quite the undertaking. Yeah. And I'm really interested in that. And I think that's also cool because a big part of that is with your wife, right?
Yeah.